Now, last week, we talked about Rebuilt, this wonderful book about a church on the East Coast and all the work that the pastor did with some of his key people to kind of reinvigorate this parish that was kind of dying. Now, the first thing I did last week was try to establish kind of a theological foundation to the book, right? And what did I say? Our first task in everything we do as Christians, and the most important thing we do, and the most essential thing we do, is we have to fall in love with Jesus Christ. At some point, you have to fall in love with Jesus Christ. Because if you don't fall in love with Jesus Christ, then everything else is just going to seem kind of sterile and kind of going through the motions and mechanical, and it really just will not allow you to maintain what you need to maintain in this world to be effectively Christian. And we talked a little bit about that concept of desire and discipline and how that affected the parish and why it was important and how we're not in the conversion business, we're in the witness business. Right? The Holy Spirit is in the conversion business. So we talked about all those theological foundations. Tonight I want to get into kind of what I didn't have time to talk about last week, and that is some of the practical concepts of what parish is really all about. And what things are really, I think, important in looking at how we do parish in the 21st century. So I'm going to start out reading from this chapter 9. In chapter 9, he makes a statement: Americans are increasingly disconnected from a sense of community. And that's a very true statement. We are. And for those of you who've lived probably 40 or 50 years or more, you remember a time when we all knew everybody. Everybody in the neighborhood knew everybody. And more importantly, all the kids knew that everybody knew who they were and where they lived, had a personal relationship with your mother. They played bingo together, or they played bridge, or whatever. And when you walked around the neighborhood, if you got into trouble, you'd hear I know where you live, Bob. I know your mom. I'm going to go down and talk to her. You better get... And in fact, sometimes people would show up at your door, and you knew you were in trouble. And you'd go scampering off, like a dog, in the back, hide in the basement or something. Right? I mean, there was a sense of community, a sense of identification that was very strong. We don't have that today. I think of a lot of us, if we walked around our immediate neighborhoods, we'd be hard-pressed to really know who's living in those houses. And if we did, it'd be by happenstance. We probably know of them, but do we really know them? And all the herds of kids that run around the neighborhoods, we really know who they are, where they live, who their parents are. Okay? So we've become kind of a disconnected group out there in secular society. And it's even worse for the younger generations. The younger generations nowadays are probably the most connected and most isolated generation in human history. They have access to more information on a constant basis, 24/7, than any generation in human history. But yet, they are the most isolated generation in human history, which is a great irony. In fact, one of the things that we're finding, especially sometimes with millennials, but especially with post-millennials that we're now seeing come through high school, they have a hard time connecting with people. And, as we're starting to see in some of the corporate world, they can't and don't know how to read body language. When it comes to body language, they're deaf. And that's a problem. Because 95% of all our communication comes from what? Body language. In fact, I like walking around the teens in my ministry and saying, they're all quiet and they're listening to me, and I say, right now you don't know it, but you're shouting at me. They're all shouting at me, and you're very loud. Why? Well, because they're very expressive. They don't realize how expressive they're really being. But if you're good at reading body language, picking up signals and cues, then they're speaking to you. And they don't even know it. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a salesman and not know how to read body language. Right? It's like when the person turns their back or rolls their eyes, points their head the other way. It's like, I think they're not interested. I don't think you're going to make the sale. You might want to change your pitch. So, what impact does that have on church? Well, it has a huge impact on church. For the following reason. 80 years ago, we were a church of immigrants. We were a church of immigrants. There was Italian churches, Catholic churches, German Catholic churches, Polish Catholic churches, or Russian Catholic churches, Armenian Catholic churches, there were Latino Catholic churches, there were, just a plethora of Catholic churches. And we had a strong cultural bond to our parish. Why? Because we were immigrants. We were outsiders. We were outliers. We weren't part of the mainstream. We weren't white Anglo-Saxon and Protestants. We were immigrants and Catholics. There's a reason why we have Catholic schools. Because we couldn't get into the other schools. There's a reason why we have Catholic hospitals. Because we weren't guaranteed access to the other hospitals or good care. We had a reason to belong to our parish. We had a strong affinity to that parish. Why? As a survival mechanism. That's why Father McGivney started the Knights of Columbus. So that immigrant Catholics could get insurance and be taken care of. That's the reality of 80 or 90 years ago. Most of our younger generations don't even understand that reality. Just like the younger generation of African Americans don't understand what it's like to be truly discriminated against. To have different water fountains and different bathrooms and not be able to ride in the front of the bus. And not be able to sit at a counter. Oh, they hear about it in the history books, they look at it, they see it on the videos, but they don't really understand the tangible reality of what it's like to be an outlier. What's happened over the last 80 years is we, as Catholics, most of us, have gone mainstream. We're no longer outliers. Well, except in some neighborhoods in Meridian. But beyond that, we're mainstream. And because of that, we don't have the same strong attachment to parish that we used to. We don't have the same necessity of parish like we used to. In fact, the only time you really see this anymore is in very strong Hispanic parishes, made up of a lot of immigrants, who have a strong affinity to the parish for the same reason we did 80 or 90 years ago. Because they're outliers. So what impact has that on us? Well, we've bought into the secular, consumerist, mainstream, societal notion of parish. It's like a drive-through. I come in, I get what I want, and I leave. Now, that's not applying to everybody. That's a broad generalization. So don't get upset if you're not one of those drive-throughs. But for the most part, that's what parish is. It's a place where we go and get a specific thing, like shopping at Target or Costco. It's not a place we see as home. It's not a place we have a really strong attachment to. And that's what this book really gets at. It's how do we, as a group of people called by Christ to each other in Him, develop the strong relational bonds and attachments we need to develop in order to truly support each other in our life journey and witness to Jesus Christ. He quotes from a book called Bowling Alone. I love that title, Bowling Alone. Anybody bowl alone? Anybody bowl by themselves? Hey, I got a strike! Woo! Yay, okay. Nobody's there to celebrate your victories. but also nobody's there to look at your gutter balls either. Ooh, hey, okay, no one's here, great, okay. I love that title, Bowling Alone. So many of us nowadays are bowling alone, and we don't even realize it. So he quotes the author, Robert Putnam. Our growing social capital deficit threatens educational performance, safe neighborhoods, equitable tax collection, democratic responsiveness, everyday honesty, and even our health and happiness. The basic problem is that we were made for relationship, quite literally. And he quotes Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." And goes on to say, we need relationships. We look for them in artificial ways if we can't find them for real, as the phenomenon that is Facebook dramatically underscores. We're made for relationships because that's how God made us. And Scripture tells us that our companions will definitely influence the quality and direction of our lives. And quotes Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. Walk with the wise and you will become wise, but the companion of fools fares badly. If you examine your personal history, you will find a story of relationships. We grow and develop and change with others. And whatever endeavor we want to succeed, we also need friends to support and encourage us. That's the way it works in life. And what's true for your life in general is also true for your faith life. Without Christ-centered friendships, our walk of faith will most certainly be slower, less steady, and we're far more likely to fall and fail. We grow in faith relationally. Our faith is a personal matter, but it's not a private matter. We need to understand the difference. We need to find tangible ways of building quality, Christ-centered, authentic relationships to counter the shallowness and self-centered construct of relationships that we see in the secular world. Quite frankly, we all need good friends. And ironically, we all desire good friends. Our deepest desire is for relationship. Why? Well, if we say we're made in God's image, if that's been revealed to us that we're made in God's image, and we think of what is God's image, the Trinity. What is the Trinity? A community of natures, each intimately involved in the other, each making the other present, and together making a whole. So how do we do that? What does that look like? You know, Father Len a couple weeks ago talked in the Mass about people who leave early or come late. Now, my mother, God rest her soul, was a good Baptist woman. And her grandmother, well, my grandmother, her mother, was a better Baptist woman. And when I was a young kid, I used to go up to visit my grandmother in the summer in Ohio. And in Sunday morning, she would get up, she'd give me a big glass of milk, and then she'd make sure I was dressed properly. And then she would take me down to her Free Will Baptist Church down the street. And I've told the story before, so you've probably heard it already. And for a young man, that was quite an experience. They danced, sung, spoke in tongues, yelled, screamed, prayed. In fact, the joke at my grandmother's church was, if you left there without the Spirit, you were either deaf or dead. And then I would come home. My mother would be waiting for me. She'd fix me breakfast. And then my mom and dad would take me to the next town, to the Catholic Church. Now, this is the 60s, mind you. The 1960s. I'm not that old. And that was quite an experience too. Stained glass, brick walls, Latin, very ornate, very quiet, very solemn, but sacred. So, we talk about some of the characteristics of parish, people leaving earlier, coming late. You know, my mother's thing, when she converted to Catholicism for the sake of my father, she wore a veil to church. See, when a Baptist becomes a Catholic, they become a real Catholic. She always wore a veil. She always liked Catholic CPR. In fact, she was very upset when they took that away. Right? And you had to be in church and seated in the pew before the gospel was read, or it didn't count. Much to the chagrin of my father on a number of occasions. We had to leave and come back. That was the way it was. The most funny event in my history with my mother was the time a new parish opened down the street. The Church of the Ascension. It was the 70s. An exciting time. My mother was giddy because we had been going to a church like 13 miles away forever. So the first Mass in this church was Palm Sunday. And my mother was very excited. So we all got dressed, went down, and she walked in. We were all very excited. And she got handed daisies. And she goes, "What are these?" She goes, "Oh, well, you know, we're giving out daisies instead of palms." She goes, "Oh, really? Well, that's nice." God says that a lot too. Well, that's nice. She turned around. She looked at my father. Didn't say a word. Remember, body language, 95% of communication, especially in a marriage. My father, being the good married man that he was, understood completely what my mother was saying, even though she hadn't said a word. We walked out of the church, and for the next hour and a half, we visited 4 other churches. The last church we visited at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, with my mother fuming because she thought she was not going to get her palms, happened to have a Filipino Mass. She was elated because she got her palms. She didn't understand a word that was said during the entire Mass. Thought the music was a little weird, but she had her palms, and that's all that mattered. Because like most good Catholic families, we had a picture of Jesus in the Sacred Heart on our wall in our living room. And behind that picture had to be palms that were refreshed every year. Otherwise, our house was sure to be destroyed in some act of divine justice. Why do I say all these things? Because, you know, the concept of church really matters in how we see church and how we understand our place in it. You know, my mother had a very strong connection to church because that's how she was raised. So the question is, when we look at our habits when it comes to church, where do we learn these habits? Where do we learn these perceptions? From family. What is family, quintessentially? There's a lot of words to describe family. If you have adolescents, you have very interesting words to describe family. Purgatory, hell, the long walk, the lonesome road, the tiresome journey. Need I continue? Anyway. Family is a small group. That's what it is. It's the domestic church. One of the things that we have to understand about today is that in order to reinvigorate our church, our parish, our faith, we need to be in relationship with other people who are on the same journey we are, who desire the same destination we do. We need to risk and go out and invest ourselves in people. Not only do we need it, but deep down inside, in a very Augustinian way, we desire it. It's what is necessary for our faith to fully grow. To help us to learn how to witness to each other and to witness to ourselves. Small groups are very powerful. In fact, it is the revolution going on in the church right now. And ironically, it's not a new revolution. It's a very old revolution. What do you think the early church looked like? Do you think we had basilicas and cathedrals and big parishes? No. It was a group of people, often meeting in someone's house, that were dedicated to witnessing to each other and supporting each other in their journey towards a fuller understanding and participation in Christ. When we talk about the new evangelization, as I said last week, it's very old. It's not the new evangelization, it's the ancient evangelization. What do you think brought people to the church? Big screens and coffee bars? They didn't exist. What do you think brought people to the church? People with a solid, intense commitment to their faith that were willing to share it with others and take a risk and invest themselves in people. Small groups. You know, one of the things that I do in teen ministry, I've been in teen ministry for 18 years. I've seen a lot of change. You know, when I came into teen ministry, the Generation X generation was rolling through. They were very emotive, Generation X. They like emotion. They were like little walking telenovelas. They like just being emotional. And we had the millennials. Now we have the post-millennials. One of the things I learned in 18 years is that entertainment theology does not work. It didn't work for Generation X, which is why so many of them left the church. It certainly didn't work for the millennials. And I haven't even tried it on the post-millennials, but I think it would be an ultimate epic fail. I remember countless number of times going to all these events, people getting very emotional, but never really understanding why they were emotional. Never understanding and getting in touch with why they felt the way they felt. Singing their God was an awesome God, but never really understanding who that awesome God was and why he was awesome. Because we didn't spend enough time building the desire for Jesus Christ within the foundation and the crucible of relationship. Which is why I do small group discipleship. That's what I do. And it works. Doesn't work for everybody, but it works for most. And it's interesting to watch teens come in and sit at a table and be very uncomfortable because they're in a place they're not used to being. They're in a place where they have to be vulnerable. They have to risk. They have to talk about things that they don't and are not used to talking about. And they have to actually look somebody in the eye and look at their face and be close to them. That is very unnerving for most teens when they first experience it. But what happens after a time, and it's not a perfect process because they're adolescents. I mean, it's not a perfect process when adults do it. If any of you have ever belonged to a bridge group, you know that it gets ugly really quickly, like on a snapper. But over time, they start to build trust with each other. Over time, they all experience their own awkward snippet of somebody else's vulnerability and sense of desire for faith. Over time, they start to witness what it's like to have this strange connection with people that they don't have out there. Because out there, he is not present. And they start to say, wow, there's something about this. that I want. I'm still uncomfortable. I still haven't totally bought into it. But there's something about this that I want. And in that crucible, we make Jesus Christ present. Not through some kind of supernatural mysticism, but we make him present in the way that he's usually present, through ordinary interaction with ordinary people in extraordinary ways. And they start to come to this understanding of the value and the beauty of having Christ-centered relationships. They don't fully understand. They won't fully understand for a while. But they start to understand. And it's very powerful to watch. I saw it happen to your daughter. Right? She spent a lot of time on the road last month. But she still wants to be here, doesn't she? Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think that is? Because of me? I hope not. I'm not interested in building a cult of personality. Cult of personality ultimately fail when the personality leaves. What I'm interested in building is a team community of believers that doesn't need me. She didn't come for the pizza because it's Domino's. That stuff sucks. What she comes for is because she has a sense that there's something here that she's not getting out there. It's the bottom line. That is church. Plain and simple. That is church right there. That's where Jesus Christ makes himself present. Is it messy? Please look at the cross. Of course it's messy. Is it always perfect? No. Of course, look at the cross. But it's real. And it's how we're made. And it touches people. It makes a difference. I don't finish journeys with these young people. I just start them. That's my job. I start my journey with young people, and I walk along with them for a while, and then they go off, and they continue their journey through life. And occasionally they come back, and, I have some time with them. But I'm a journey starter. I'm not a journey finisher. That's the same thing for adults. All of you. I love it. Why are you two together? Because you have to be? Yeah. Okay. That sometimes happens. Same address. Like, you better sit with me, boy. You're not going home with me tonight. You better find that Motel 6 with the lights still on. Right? And why are you guys sitting together? Huh? What drew you together? Good friends? So you came in here knowing each other? All right, but you're sharing this experience, right? Yeah. It's important to sit with people you know. And that's the number one reason why young adults don't go to church. Did you know that? Absolutely number one reason why young adults don't go to church, because they don't want to sit with people they don't know. That's why we spend a lot of time building relationships out there, so they can feel comfortable coming in here. That's why things like Theology on Tap are so important. Okay? How do you guys sit together?
We have the same name.
Your neighbors?
In that Catholic,
Like that Mr. Rogers thing?
We have the same name.
You have the same name? So you got some affinity there, right?
We always walk on that side of the room, so we figure we sit over here.
Oh, okay. It's that thunder, lightning, everything frightening thing, right? Yeah, you have that queen moment? Yeah, okay. Bob would go like, boom! Right? Yeah. All right. I know why you two are together. And this is why we need clergy. You see? That's why we need clergy. Our job is to bring everybody together. To bring that herd of sheep. I don't say flock because flock's sissy. Flock's a sissy word. Who wants to belong to a flock? Like something you do with your hair. You want to belong to a herd. Okay. That's just me. All right. Our job as clergy is to bring people together and help them witness Christ. And to make sure there's nobody out there on their own. That's important. Jesus says that, right? Go after that sheep. That one person over there. Go after him. Why? Because what happens when an animal is separated from the herd? Anybody?
Lunch.
Lunch. Yeah, good word, lunch. You see, that's the lie the world tries to sell us. And it does a pretty good job, actually. Oh, we can be on our own. We don't need anybody. We're independent. We're self-actualized. You know, we got it all together. You know? And the devil's just going, love it. It's like the wolf comes by, searches out the edge of the pasture and goes, let's see. Ooh, there's one out there by themselves. Fun. Oh, and they think they can do it all for themselves. Ooh, more fun. They're self-actualized. Ooh, that's like cherry topping on the whipped cream. Right? That's what we do. We bring people together. So I brought you two together. You guys introduce yourself?
Yes.
Good. So excited. Huh? So there. Ooh. You sure you're not Baptist? He's asking.
No, I'm Catholic, thank you.
All right. See? He's even Baptist refuting the fact that you're sad. How you doing, Nick? What you back here?
I came in late.
You came in late, so you felt guilty? So you're in the guilty chair? Okay. I might have to put you with somebody.
Yeah.
You want to sit over here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to make you move because you're not alone. You got enough. You're not enough going on. I don't need the burden. So why'd you guys come together? You guys know each other?
No.
Superb! I love it. Did you introduce yourselves?
No.
What's your name?
Isabel?
Isabel? What's your name?
Martha?
Martha, meet Isabel. Isabel, meet Martha. All right. Nice to know you. And what's your name? Joseel, meet Isabel and Martha. All right, see? God, I love this. It's such a good thing. I feel like Mr. Rogers. I should be wearing a sweater. You're in my neighborhood. I know why you guys are together, right? You feed you, right? That's why you hang out with us. Okay. It's like my daughter. She affectionately calls me. My nickname, my youngest daughter, she has a nickname for me. It's called the Walleye. I gotta work on it. So why are you guys sitting together? All right. Why did you sit here? Was he not scaring you? He didn't look very scary. He did have a friendly smile. Yeah. And these guys look pretty friendly. They're smiling, right? Okay. Now you guys introduce yourselves to each other?
Nope.
Uh-oh. Well, now you know I expect you to take care of that, right? Why are you guys all sitting together? He looks like it's fun, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I know. First time I saw him, I was like, this guy's fun. Why'd you sit here? We'll see. You guys know each other's names?
Yeah.
Yeah? You know their names?
We introduced ourselves. Yes.
You did? I'm putting you on the spot, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, well, remind each other.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last table. Why are you guys sitting with Kevin? Best view in the middle? Oh, so you got like front row seats, right? At the opera? Yeah? Okay. You guys introduce yourself to each other? Well, make sure you do that. Okay. See, we all congregate for different reasons, right? We all congregate for different reasons. We all seek out relationships, and we have all kinds of different means of doing so. And I tell the teens, it's like, you don't think this is natural what you're doing? Think again. How many of you walk into the school cafeteria and just plop yourself down at any table? I don't think so. That doesn't happen. If we remember our high school days, there's a lot of planning that goes on when you enter the cafeteria. There's a lot of strategic decision making happening, right? First thing you do when you walk in the cafeteria, you either come preloaded, right, with your friends and with you, right, and walk in with your own gaggle, your group, your herd, or you start scanning, right? Looking for people. Because you don't want to sit with a bunch of strangers you don't know. They may be dangerous, right? You don't want to sit by yourself because people will talk. So the first thing you do in the cafeteria is, what are you doing? You're looking for a group. You're not even thinking about it, but you're looking for a group. And the entire time you're in line, you're scanning. Who am I going to sit with? Where am I going to sit? What's the cost going to be? What's invested? You know? Well, I can't sit by her because she talks a lot. I'll never get anything done. I can't sit by her because she doesn't talk at all. I'll be bored. They're fighting all the time over there. It's a dangerous table. Right? Finding groups, finding relationships is natural to us. Why? Because again, it's how we're made. So when we talk about church, we need to start talking about belonging to each other and belonging to groups that we feel belonging towards, an investment in whatever way we can. Now, part of the problem we have is when we hear the word small group is, oh, well, those small groups, they're a little spooky because they're just a bunch of people that kind of hang out together and they have a little banner and they look like a Boy Scout den patrol or whatever, and they just kind of weird me out. Well, some groups are like that. But we have a lot of small groups. And they really kind of align themselves with the general nature of the parish. We have liturgical small groups. The altar servers all hang out together. They're like a little mob. Right? You don't want to mess with them. They're like the mafia. They'll get you. Right? I mean, I've had arguments with like little guys. Hey, you trying to tell me I can't serve? What are you talking about there, deacon? I'll come back. No offense, Nick. But anyway, you got the lectors. They kind of hang out together, studying scripture, talking about how to talk, and, kind of critiquing each other. And then you got those ushers. Now that's a serious group of people. Because when they get together, they're all looking good. Right? And they have name badges. Right? I mean, what kind of group affinity is that? You get a group of people together, they have name badges. It's like they all know each other's names. Right? And they want you to know that they know each other's names. They want you to know their name. It's a tight bunch, ushers. You don't have those deacons. We don't even want to talk about deacons. They're kind of a feisty bunch. And the priests are kind of a mystery. You really don't know what those guys are up to. They're running around being priests, what the heck. They're doing something. But bottom line is, we have groups centered around the liturgy. We have groups centered around catechesis, the religious education teachers. You don't want to mess with them. Don't ever mess with a religious ed teacher. It can get dangerous really fast. You'll find yourself scarred up by expo markers, hit with the plaster Jesus. I mean, it can just get violent when you start to mess with religious education teachers. But they're a very tight bunch, and they're very dedicated, and they support each other. I can't believe what my second graders did to me today, man. It was so intense in there, I can't stand it. They support each other. And they do it, and they look forward to doing it because they sense that community, sense that investment, and that mutual desire to teach the faith. Same thing with high school core teams, junior high core teams, RCIA. Very tight bunch. And then we have kind of like the service groups. Knights of Columbus, Legion of Mary, Rosary Makers. Those Rosary Makers are intense. Have you ever watched those guys? You gotta come in and watch the Rosary Makers. They are awesome. I mean, they're just sitting there making those rosaries like nobody's business. Boom, boom, boom. It's intense. And then we got the quilters, ones who make the prayer blankets. Those are cool. We got St. Vincent de Paul. That's a big operation out there. A lot of stuff going on. We have the Catholic women. Now that's a bunch you definitely don't want to mess with, ever. Even Father Lynn doesn't mess with the Catholic women. Okay? So we have those kind of groups. We have the small groups that form out of the evangelization retreat. We have small groups that form out of people that go through RCIA. But we need to be more focused on encouraging people on a regular basis as part of our parish culture to either gather and form a small group or go out and belong to one. Why? Why is that important? It's like, well, I don't need no small group. I can come here and do my stuff. That sounds like too much work to me. What do you think about it? Let's talk about leaving Mass early. Now, some people have a legitimate reason to leave Mass early, and that's okay. But let's talk about just people in general leave Mass early. What's going on there? Well, when you're not committed to something, and you're not in a place, in an environment where you learn to commit yourself to something, and that something isn't meaningful in the sense that you need to feel an obligation to belong to it until it's over. It's like sitting down to dinner at families, right? Oh, or leaving without permission, right? Like mom, you get up to go and mom's like, excuse me, where are you going? Where are you going? Did I say you can leave the table? Sit back down and wait till everyone's finished. Now your mother can say that and get away with it, but Father Lynn can't. Excuse me, where are you going? Are we finished up here? Did you ask me to leave? Sit back down that pew. Wait till we're finished. Well, I never. All right. If we're in a small group and we learn how to be committed to that small group in the concept of perish in Christ, what happens? We start to learn that, we belong to this group. And we start to feel comfortable being involved in the entire activity that group is involved in. It's like when you have a group, if you're going to someone's house for dinner, are you late? No. Do you leave early? No. Not unless it's an emergency. Why? It's rude and inconsiderate. Because you have investment in that person, don't you? Or in those people. But yet we don't do that for Jesus. Right? Why? Because we're not invested. You see, what we learn in small groups forms our entire behavior pattern for everything we do at Parish. When we learn to become invested in each other in small groups, we learn to become invested in Parish. We learn the importance of showing up on time and staying through the entire activity and investing ourselves in whatever activity we're staying in or involved in. And those small groups have to have 3 essential qualities. First and foremost, they have to be Christ-centered. They have to be Christ-centered. The focus of the small group has got to be bringing ourselves as a group and individuals closer to Jesus Christ. Secondly, they have to be attached, invested in the parish. Attached or invested in the parish. What are we as a small group doing to contribute to the greater church? Do we go to Mass together? Because I guarantee if you're all sitting together in the pew, I doubt very seriously you're going to leave early or come late. Do we get involved in different parish ministries? Do we contribute in some way? What do we do? You're more apt to do something if you're in a group than by yourself. Hey, let's all go down and go insane and volunteer for the parish carnival. Yeah! Well, if you're going to be insane, I'll be insane. But I'm not being insane on my own. That's how that works. Let's all be insane. So your entire group is going to be involved in running a booth at the parish carnival. It's going to be painful. You're going to suffer. You're going to wonder, what the heck were you thinking when you volunteered? But you're all going to be suffering together. It's going to be one lifeboat of pain, right? Isn't that much preferable than just you out there, right? I know. That's key, you see. And that's why I think small groups are so important. And it's not something that we just have to, do. And lastly, the small group has always got to be open to growth. It always has to be open to growth and new members. Now, sometimes a group gets to a certain size and has to stop growing for a certain period of time. But if people leave, then they have to go out and actively seek new members. What often happens in small groups is they start out and they grow up to like 9 or 10 people, and then they don't want to grow anymore because of logistics or whatever, and then they stop. And then 3 people leave and they don't grow anymore. Now they're down to 7. And then another 3 people leave and they don't grow anymore. Now they're down to 4. And then another couple people leave and then you got 2 people going, what happened to our group? So that's why you always have to be open to growth. Not continuous growth, but growth. Okay? So Christ-centered, parish-focused, open to growth. And it has to be more than just something that we do as a parish as part of a plan. Well, we got to have a strategic plan. We're going to change the parish. We're going to have a NAT chart up here, and it's a 3-year strategic plan. We're going to have a mission statement and a vision statement, and we're going to have a project coordinator, and we're going to go out there and make it happen. And you're like, I'm going to go down to Lutheran church. It's much more simple. Okay? No. Doesn't need a plan, doesn't need a mission statement, doesn't need a vision. It just needs to happen. And it has to happen because all of us are invested in it. All of us see it as a critical part of our participation in parish. We're all seeking it. We're all witnessing to it. We see someone out there by themselves, you introduce yourself. Hey, do you belong to a group? Nope. I just come to Mass every week. Nobody talks to me. No one really cares. Nobody knows my name. Well, lucky day. How you doing? Why don't you come to me and belong to my small group? You're not going to be alone anymore. Oh, scary, spooky, creepy. But hey, you have to take a risk. See, it's got to be part of the parish culture. We've got to welcome people all the time. And not just welcome people into the larger church, but welcome people into our group, our small domestic church. And help them invest themselves and invest in them. And then what happens is all those things that we learn in those small groups come together and we become a very strong, vibrant, focused parish. Yeah. This is something we used to do very well. We've forgotten how to do it. Other people learn from us. Some other people do it really well. They know all the Catholic families on their block. They know their names, they know their children, they spend time together, they go to church together, they're invested in a church together, they take care of each other. And we go, wow, look at that. How do they do that? Very simple. Very simple. Right here. Right here. That's what it takes. Just sitting down at a table with somebody, introducing yourself, learning their name, investing in them, taking an interest in them, and finding some kind of commonality. That's the beginning. And before you know it, you feel like being a part of Holy Apostles because you're in this small group of Holy Apostles parishioners who have come together to support their parish and be Christ-centered and support each other. You feel like your faith means something. That Jesus Christ is real. That what he teaches us and the way he challenges us is real. That's what church needs to look like. That's what I want the young people to see. Because if they can leave here at least understanding this dynamic and feeling some sort of attraction to it and understand the power of it, then they're going to seek it in college. And they're going to seek it when they leave college. And they're going to come and participate in church because of it. And again, this is nothing new. What did Jesus do? Did he go up to the temple, rip the veil, open the Holy of Holies, and say, God is in the house? make appointments with my secretary? No. He invested in people. Hi, I'm Jesus. What's your name?
Kevin.
Kevin, come follow me. All right. Hi, what's your name?
Debbie.
Debbie, I'm Jesus. Come follow me. You see, that's how he built his church. Very simply. He invested himself in people. Right? And not just people that made him feel comfortable or people that believed in what he believed in. Right? You know, this weekend I had team ministry during Super Bowl. Outrageous, Deacon Bob. I said, well, I don't know who's going to show up. All the Packers and Niners fans did. All the kids in here are Packers and Niners fans. No, we had about 15 teams. We never have a big crowd. But you know what? I have to make sure people understand that Super Bowl does not stop church. And it's okay if you watch the Super Bowl, that's fine. But for those who didn't want to watch the Super Bowl, they had some place to come. So they came, we had pizza, we had wings, and we watched Jesus of Nazareth. It's a great movie, by the way. I skipped the Nativity and the Passion, and we went right to the middle, kind of in the ministry. And there's a part in there that's really wonderful, that I really wanted them to experience. Jesus has come into Matthew's house. Matthew, the tax collector, the outcast, the unclean one, because he cooperates with the Roman oppressors. Scandalized his followers. Jesus, what are you doing? You can't go into his house. He's unclean. He's a tax collector. And I love the reply. Jesus looks and says, I go wherever I'm welcome. Wow, that's powerful. I love that one. That's a great one-liner. I go wherever I'm welcome. And so it goes into Matthew's house. And on the outside, it's just such a beautiful scene because we're kind of in a courtyard. You know, kind of true to the form of the houses back in those days. And they're in this courtyard, and Matthew's having a party. He's got all these kind of, licentious people around. And on the outside, right outside the door of this courtyard entrance, are all his disciples. And they're kind of hovering. They can't go inside because it's unclean. But they're going to hover because they're checking out what's going on with Jesus. What's he doing in there? And Jesus sits down, and Matthew welcomes him, and everybody kind of focuses on him. And he sees Peter. Peter's hanging right by the door. This is just a wonderful scene. Peter's like, what is this guy doing? Peter's struggling with his call because Jesus has already called him to follow him, right? And Peter's really struggling with it. So he's like, what is this guy doing? I can't understand. He's supposed to be a rabbi, a teacher. He's worked miracles. What's going on? And then the most awesome part of the whole picture arrives. Matthew says, tell us a story, Rabbi. And everybody's like, yeah, tell us a story. Because the people there don't really know who he is, but they know he's famous. Right? They're like, I don't know who you are, but you're famous. So, yeah, I'll hear your story. Right? It's like getting Obama tickets. I don't know who this guy is, but everybody wants to see him. Anyway, I just had to throw that in there. I couldn't help myself. Anyway, bad Bob. But anyway, so Jesus gets up and he tells a story. There was a man with two sons. And the younger son came to his father and he said, Father, I want what's due me. The father divides his estate between his two sons. And you all know the story of the prodigal son. I'm not going to repeat it in its fullness. But he goes on to tell the story. It's wonderful to watch him tell the story. Because 3/4 of the way through the story, it's evident to both Matthew and Peter that he's talking to them. You see, this is the beautiful thing of watching, that you really see the parable come alive. Because who is Matthew in the story? The younger son. The one that's wandered off, right? And the one who's trying to come back. And the Father has come to, God has come to him. God has walked into his house, has walked into his boat, right? Like Peter. Who's the older son in the story? Peter, standing outside, not knowing why the father is hanging out with this younger son because of what he's done, refusing to come into the house. And it's at that moment that Jesus describes the father coming out of the house and pleading with the older son to come in and celebrate his brother's return. That Peter recognizes, and you just see it on his face, he understands that Jesus is talking about him. And Peter, in this great moment of uncertainty and just uncomfortableness, walks into Matthew's house and walks up to Jesus. And Jesus is there with Matthew, and Matthew understands who he is in the story. And Jesus steps out of the way, and Matthew and Peter embrace. It's absolutely stunning. If you ever get a chance to watch the movie, it's probably one of the most beautiful examples of a parable told that I've ever seen. And you see what the effect of God has on people. Is it easy to come into relationships? No. Is it risky? Yes. Is it messy? Absolutely. But it is what we were made for. And it's what our church should look like. All the time. All the time. And so, our job as parishioners, holy apostles, is to invest ourselves in each other. And to be active in finding ways to do so with other people. In whatever venue and whatever way feels comfortable or feels meaningful to us or that we can handle based on the reality of our lives. There's no room for cookie cutter approaches here. Every group is different. Every commitment level is different. But belong to something. Find a way to belong to something. Start your own group. But belong to something. And we as clerics, the deacons and priests of this parish, need to be promoting that, need to be encouraging that, need to be enhancing and supporting that construct. This new program we have called Catholics Being Catholics, how many of you know about it? Raise your hands. Yeah. We had the big board out there. I felt like it was like Dr. Strangelove. Right? Look at the big board. They had the big board, and everybody's putting pins in it about where they live, right? And then Mary Wax, one of our staff who does RCA, is taking all that information and compiling it with the help of the NSA. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, you're going to have little Catholic drones flying over your house dropping off rosaries. Have you prayed your novena yet? Okay. But what she's doing is trying to bring people together in neighborhoods to belong to groups, to encourage the formation of these neighborhood groups. I think it's an awesome idea. It's not for everybody. But you may not know that within 2 blocks of you might be 5 or 6 other Catholic families. Yeah. And all you have to do is just maybe invite those families over. And start to meet with them and start to get to know them. And start to define what your group's going to look like. What Christ is going to look like in your group. And start investigating each other. Lo and behold, you start to be church together. And you start talking about what kind of things all of you like to do and how you can invest yourself in the parish doing those things. I mean, you may do something even as radical as come to the same Mass together. What? Sitting in the same pew together. What? No. No way. We can't do that. Right? It's a great program. It's one way of building small group. Helping small groups form in the different ministries of the parish is another way. Encouraging and supporting the small groups to form out of the evangelization retreat is another way. I belong to a small group, small men's group down St. John's, former parish. I belong to it now for about 6 years. Every Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock, we get together. It's like, you guys are Catholic, man. It's got to be painful. See, if we were Lutheran, we do it at 7. If we were Episcopalian, we do it at 8. If we were Baptist, we'd be doing it at 4 o'clock in the morning. Love it. Yeah, we're in for Jesus. But we get together, and it's very simple. We all come together, we sit around, and the first thing we do is we ask, how have you seen God last week? How have you experienced God? I think we have a group like that in this parish, too. Yeah, we do. And then we read the gospel for this coming Sunday. And then we talk about it. We read the readings. And then we talk about it. And then we may talk about some events coming up that we may want to support. You know, some things we want to get involved in. Sometimes we collect money for some kind of thing going on that needs to be taken care of. But we invest in each other. We get to know each other. It's very powerful. I still belong to that group, even though I'm here. Not because I don't love you guys. I do. But they're my homeboys. They're my crew. You know? And we got all kinds of people in that group. And it's very meaningful to me. I miss it when I don't participate in it. Number one, because I feel like I'm letting the guys down. Literally, I don't want to miss the meeting because I feel like I'm letting them down. And I feel like I'm letting myself down. I want to be there. I don't have to be there, but I want to be there. And I have a routine every Tuesday. I have to get up at a certain time, so I have enough time to shower, enough time to get downtown and get my big honking cup of caffeine and drink half of it before I get there, so I'm loaded and ready to go. With Deacon Bob's going to talk some Jesus. Why do I do that? Because I want to. That's the beauty of it. When we're in relationships, we're invested in people. We do the things we do because we want to. You see, that's when it changes. And that's the key to understanding this book. Understanding the new evangelization. And understanding the direction that our Holy Father Francis is trying to take the church. And where the popes that preceded him have been trying to take the church. If you go to Mass because you want to, you will arrive on time and you will stay to the end. It's just that simple. We fully invest ourselves in things that we want to do. If we don't want to do them and we feel like we're having to do them, we don't. That's just the truth of human behavior. So the key is helping each other want to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, want to be in his church, want to witness to him, want to participate in the sacraments, want to participate in the missionary work of the church, want to go to Mass. That's the key to all the things we've talked about. How do we desire? Like I talked about last week, if we have the desire, we'll have the discipline. Discipline without desire is a recipe for failure. If you have the desire, you'll have the discipline. We see this in our children, don't we? My daughter, my 17-year-old, God bless her, she's the last of her kind. Adolescence is a dying breed in my house. I'm so excited. She has this issue with getting up in the morning. Everybody have issues with getting up in the morning with their teenagers, probably? Do you get up in the morning on time? No. But now, if you're doing something or having to get ready for something that you want to do you get up on time? Yes! Yes, you're so consistent. I love it. Absolutely you do. Isn't it amazing? It is amazing to watch, right? When my daughter has something that she's looking forward to, wants to do, it's like, bam! She's up, the alarm goes off, she's in the shower, she gets dressed on her own, she pops upstairs, makes her own breakfast, and is ready to go! Woo! I go, hallelujah, Jesus, I've seen a miracle. Praise the Lord. Right? But when it's nothing she has to do, like go to school, it's like watching the book of Job unfold. Why, Lord? I'm suffering, Lord. Why? Right? I mean, it's just so amazing. Of course, we were the same way when we were teenagers. There's no mystery there, right? But that's why half of us cry and the other half laugh, depending on our situation, right? But that's the key. See, what we do in small groups, the magic of small groups, is they go from having to be here to wanting to be here. That's why I do small group discipleship. Most of my teens come here because they have to be here. Right? You get confirmed or I'm just going to kill you. Right? You're not going to turn pagan on me. Right? You go to all teen. You need that stuff. And they come in here all upset at Jesus. I hate you, Jesus. Right? Okay. It's like, oh, you guys just hang out, do your thing. Within 2 or 3 months. They never tell you that, by the way. Right? If you get into teen ministry to be validated, you're in the wrong business. Trust me, you're in the wrong business. Okay? Magically, they start showing up. And see, what they don't know is that Deacon Bob is really good at reading body language. Very good at it. And they don't have to tell me that they want to be here. I know they want to be here. I can tell it by the way they sit, by the way they hold their head, by the way they act, by the way they move their arms, by the way they move their eyes, how many times their scalp flexes, how many times they shuffle in their chair. I know it. Yep, you want to be here. That's the key. So, to wrap it all up, the challenge of the 21st century church is to be the first century church. I'm going to put Vatican II in a nutshell. The challenge of the 21st century church is to be the first century church. We have to be willing to martyr ourselves to secular humanism and consumerism and materialism and scientism and relativism. We have to be willing to invest ourselves with joy and intensity and commitment in our belief in Jesus Christ shared in community. We have to want to be a community of people that are in love with Jesus Christ. And we have to want to go out into the world hostile to his message and witness it. In the 21st century, the challenge of the church is to be like the first century church. So all of you need to be invested in that. If you're a member of a small group now, great. Continue to participate. Continue to invest yourself. Look at your small group. How can it grow? Not in size, but also in quality. How are you invested in the parish? If you've been thinking about getting into a small group, invest yourself in finding one. They're all over the place. If you don't know how, look at the Catholics Becoming Catholics program. Put your pen and your address in the system. You might be surprised at who's around you. They might not all be Mormons. Okay? It's up to you to do this. I can't do this. Father Lynn can't do this. Bishop Peter can't do this. We can help, and we should. We can encourage, we can enhance, we can support. But this is a revolution from the bottom up, not the top down. This is how we reinvigorate the church. By participating in real, authentic, relational witness to the love and the good news of Jesus Christ. It's up to all of us to do it. Thank you. Now, any questions or comments or thoughts that came up while I was speaking? Anybody? Nobody? Yes, sir.
You said that entertainment theology doesn't work,
No,
I think.
it doesn't work.
We were talking about something like that at our small faith group. One of the people was saying that we need to keep the rubrics, as he called it, in the church and the orthodoxy. And I was saying that I thought it was very important to have not what you would call entertainment, but people who were good at music, good speakers. I don't care if they speak from the pulpit, from the steps of the altar, or down the center of the church. If they're good, I'm going to come back and listen to them.
Right.
But the general consensus was that we need to stick to the rules. And so
Okay.
I'm like, well, yeah, rules are good, but
Yeah.
you've got to have some variety.
Mhm.
And I think if when people leave the church or come in and then they don't want to stay, maybe we push too many rules on them too fast. And so they're going to go somewhere where, they've got music and
Sure.
Bible and,
Sure.
and friendly.
Big screens and a coffee bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what you've hit upon is what we talked about last week a little bit, and it's really key. We live, part of the problem with society nowadays is we've gotten into this concept of being polarized. All right? We're a polarized society. We put labels on that polarization. And you all know them. I'm not going to regurgitate them. All right? Same thing happened with Jesus, right? You had 4 factions around when Jesus Christ was walking the earth. You had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots, and the Essenes. Each faction had a concept of what Jesus should be. The Pharisees wanted him to be a good teacher who held true to the laws of Moses and the teachings of the prophets and the witness of the teachers before him. The Sadducees wanted him to be an obedient Jew that worked within the power structure of the day. Their power structure. That they had a vested interest in maintaining. The Zealots wanted him to be the Messiah of the Maccabees that was going to come back and kick out the oppressors, reestablish the power base in Jerusalem, and reinvent the kingdom of David. The Essenes wanted him to be a guru, a teacher of wisdom, someone who would help them continue their process of isolation and purification away from a disgustingly bad and flawed world. Jesus was having none of any of them because he was God. And as God so aptly stated to Moses when Moses tried to figure out his name, because Moses was brought up in a house of polytheism, not monotheism, Egyptian gods. What is your name? Which God are you? That's what he was asking. God said, I am who I am. I'm not what you want me to be. I'm not what you expect me to be. I'm not under your control. I'm not going to meet your expectations. You're not going to understand what I do all the time. I am who I am. And that's exactly what Jesus was. He was who he was. And the Zealots were upset at him. Judas was a zealot. That's why he betrayed him. Because in the end, he had so much expectation of the power that Jesus showed in his miracles and the way that he triumphantly entered Jerusalem according to the prophecies, that this surely had to be the Messiah that would defeat the Romans and reestablish the power of Israel, which was the zealot agenda. And when he didn't do that, he betrayed him. The Sadducees had him arrested because he threatened their power. The Pharisees didn't want anything to do with him because he taught like he was God, and he blasphemed, and he went against their sense of propriety and tradition. And the Essenes Well, they were so isolated, they really didn't know what was going on until after it happened. Kind of like people over in Oregon. I don't know, whatever. But my point being is this. Jesus failed everybody's expectations. Except the one person whose expectations mattered. God. Right? What did Paul say? This, to wise men, is foolhardy. This is your God. This is your Messiah. This is your Savior. Are you out of your mind? This is a defeated man, an oppressed man, a persecuted man. That's what fools see, or wise men see, who are fools. But those of us who are fools for Christ, who have faith, we see a man who's being totally who he was made to be, and totally accomplishing the mission that he was given to accomplish. To those of us who are fools for Christ, that is what success looks like. No wealth, no power, no pleasure, no fame. Just mission accomplished. To the wise, that's ridiculous. So, in this polarization we see today, we have people on one side who want to be overly pastoral. Let's just love each other. Let's just be nice, friendly. Let's have a big coffee bar with big TVs and have a message that tells everybody that the holier you are, the more you get, the happier you are. Come on, just listen to our message. Come on down, Kevin, to the Happy Hotel. Right? Then we want to have people on the other extreme who want to be orthodox. It's all about orthodoxy. Kevin, are you fasting?
No.
Are you going to church on Sunday like you should?
No.
Are you saying your nightly prayers?
No.
Did you go to, when was the last time you went to
A
reconciliation?
long time ago.
Heathen pagan, harlot, whore of Babylon.
That would be me.
You're making it too easy, Kevin. You know? Welcome to our church, whore of Babylon. You know? What they don't understand is what Jesus practiced was pastoral orthodoxy. Pastoral orthodoxy. If you really want to understand what pastoral orthodoxy looks like, look at what he did with the prostitute. This is a great story of pastoral orthodoxy. So Jesus comes into the crowd, right? The crowd is all about the rules, right? This woman has sinned. This woman is an adulteress. And by Moses' law, we have to take her outside town and stone her to death. Which is what would have happened to Mary if they'd have found out she was pregnant right away. Which makes that, yes, a whole big deal. Of course, the famous rabbi comes into the scene, and they're like, ooh, here's the famous miracle-working rabbi. Let's see what he has to say. Right? What would you do, Jesus? Now, Jesus knows the law. Right? So what did Jesus do? I love this. It's so awesome. Puts a stone on the ground. And I love the story. It says he writes, I mean, no one knows what he wrote. Probably something like dipsticks or something like that. Or how many times do I have to do this? But he said that those who are without sin throw the first stone. Now, what was Jesus doing with that statement? That's the great statement of pastoral orthodoxy. See, rules are great as long as you realize that every one of us breaks them. You see, if you realize that every one of us breaks the rules, then none of us really needs to sit in judgment of each other. We just need to help each other, not break the rules. So what was Jesus doing? He was balancing the scales. See, what he was doing with the prostitute was he was making her realize that her dignity was no less than these other people who were judging her. Because they couldn't cast the first stone. So that means they were sinners too. And what he was making these other people realize was, excuse me, but what are you doing judging this person when you have things that you've done that you can be judged by? And so we all know the story. All the people walk away. Prostitute, are you gonna judge me? And what does Jesus say? There's nobody else around to judge you. Why should I judge you? Right? He lifts her up. Here's the key. See, he lifts her up, he reestablishes her dignity as a person, and then he says, go forth and sin no more. Okay? See, that's key. He doesn't say, okay, now go back to being a good prostitute. Gives her a high five, you got off. He says, go forth and sin no more. You see, once he raised up her dignity to the point of making her realize that she had worth, she no longer had to be a prostitute. She no longer needed to be a prostitute. She could move beyond her prostitution because somebody had invested in her and raised her up out of that mire of unworthiness and allowed her to see herself differently. And that's what he did. He challenged her. He didn't judge her, he challenged her. Now that you know you're the same as all those other people, go no and sin no more. Don't go back to your former life. See, that's the key to understanding what you were talking about. Rules are great. Why? Because they're the way we understand how we're supposed to work and behave and relate to each other. They have a place. There's nothing wrong with rules. There's nothing wrong with tradition because it gives us a sense of belonging and a sense of stability, and those things are important. But the bottom line is what's most important, what's in the center of all that, why we have all those things, is so that we can develop a love for Jesus Christ. And so, as I teach the teens, what's the difference between admonishment and judgment? One of the spiritual works of mercy is to correct sinners. It doesn't say judge sinners, it says correct sinners. That's admonishment. If you want to see admonishment at work, go to an AA meeting. You'll see admonishment at work. Beautifully. I remember the first AA meeting I went to with a friend. It's like, wow, look, everyone around the table is an alcoholic, and nobody's judging each other, and everybody's invested in each other's potential for failure, and everybody's invested in each other's potential for success, and they're all working to help each other, knowing the fact that they're all alcoholics. And if you fall down off the wagon and you get drunk, I'm going to come over to your house and I'm going to pick you back up and say, brother, I've been where you have been, walk with me, because I don't want you to be there. That's admonishment. That's investing in somebody. Not for the purpose of judging them, but for the purpose of walking with them and helping them be better. That's what we're called to do. So the rules are great. The rules have their place. They have their purpose. But the question is not about the rules, it's what we do with them. And that's the point. In your small group, you invest in each other's weaknesses just as much as you invest in each other's strengths. You're not surprised that the people around the table who all say they're Catholic are all sinners. That doesn't shock you, and it shouldn't. You don't get disappointed when you walk into church and people don't behave like Christ, because they're not. They're trying to be, but they're not. And you invest in each other. That's the key. Pastoral orthodoxy. That's what our Holy Father Francis is all about. He's not trying to change the church. He's not trying to water it down. He's not trying to change the rules. He's trying to bring Christ and the divine mercy and the heart of our Lord and Savior to his church, to make those rules mean something. Not because you have to follow them, but because you want to follow them. See, that's the key. At some point, I want to stop drinking. And as soon as I get to that point of wanting to finally stop drinking and not blaming everybody else for making me stop drinking, guess what? I stop drinking. Maybe. And I recognize that the only way I'm going to be successful is by investing myself in other people who will walk along with me. Not pull me, not push me, but walk along with me. That's what church should look like. That's what you learn in your small groups. I don't expect these teens to be perfect in their small groups. They're going to annoy each other. They're going to frustrate each other. They're going to pick on each other. They're going to be fully human in these small groups. But the difference is they're being fully human with Christ in the center. They're learning how to hold themselves to a different standard and desire that standard and rise up to it. See, in a small group, we do exactly what they say in the Bible. What do? We put the flour in a big bowl, we add water to it, we mix it really well until it's really evenly mixed and has a right consistency. And then what do? We add what to it? Yeast. We put the yeast in the bread, and then we pop it out, and we let it rise. You see that mixing the flour with all the lumps and the water, it's messy business. And it takes a while, and you got to keep doing it until it gets to that consistency, which is proper for you to add the yeast to it. And then you add the yeast to it, which is Jesus Christ, and then you let it rise. That's the analogy of a small group. Question? No question? Okay. Did I answer your question? Kind of, sort of? Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is there's nothing wrong with rubrics. There's nothing wrong with rules. They have their place and they have their meaning. But again, it's the purpose. What's the purpose of the rule? What's the purpose of the law?
I think the 10% or 15% of the Catholics that are regulars that come to church during the week sometime, they understand all that and they get it. But the people that are coming to church on Sunday maybe, they come in possibly late and leave maybe early. Those are the ones that are probably the 60% of the church that's coming and leaving, and sometimes for years at a time. So how do we, in a sense, not entertainment, but I think
Investment.
good practices,
Yeah, investment.
without being too concerned with the orthodoxy.
Well, you have to invest in them. That's the key. You have to invest in people. You know, you have to basically, first and foremost, you have to witness yourself. Right? And then you have to invest in people. You have to first go out and meet them and invest in them and then walk along with them, and through your witness, they will hopefully start to desire what you're witnessing. And when they start desiring it, guess what? They start doing it. You know, I guarantee you. In fact, I'll challenge all of you with this experiment. Next time you go to Mass, because people have a certain consistency with Mass, do they not? Same people show up every week, same people leave early every week. Right? Find out, watch the people who are leaving early. The next week when you come to Mass, sit next to them. Introduce yourself. Say, wow, you know, I love coming to Mass. You know? I'm really glad you're here. The readings this week are fantastic. You know? I mean, I just love watching, you know, the whole Mass progress. And you talk about, tell your story. Don't teach, just tell your story. What you love about the Mass. And then when they get ready to leave, say, oh, we gotta wait till the end here. This is great. Let's walk out together. I want to get to know you a little more. Let's chat outside. See what happens. See what happens when you invest in somebody. I would say my bet would be that they won't leave early. Unless they're one of those people that really needs to leave early for whatever reason. They're impaired or whatever. Some people leave early because they can't drive at night. You know, there's valid reason. But maybe for the first time in that person's life, somebody has invested in them within the Mass. Somebody has noticed them.
Oh, everyone's going to get an email
Well, good.
from that guy.
Good. I hope so. But you know what? If it works, and the next time you come to Mass, the next week, you sit by him again. It's so good to see you. Oh, stalker. Okay. Goes to the 5:30 mass, yeah, exactly. But my point is this, we have to invest in people. If we don't invest in each other, if we don't take the time to invest in each other, how are we going to change each other? You know, that's what Jesus did. He invested in us. That's what the incarnation is all about. The incarnation is the great investment. Right? And if Jesus can come down and be one of us and suffer through everything, including that indignity right there, I think we can invest in ourselves, in each other. And we start to learn how to do that, because that's kind of, you know, quite frankly, what I just described to you in that experiment, that's a little challenging. It's a little spooky and creepy, right? But if you do it in a small group, it's not so spooky and creepy, right? And I guarantee you, if you're in a small group with somebody who doesn't go to Mass on a regular basis, and you invite them, you keep inviting them, guess what? They start going to Mass. Why? Because they can sit next to someone they know. They don't feel like they're a stranger. They don't feel uncomfortable or awkward. They want to get out of there because they don't want to socialize with people because they're uncomfortable and awkward, because nobody's invested in them. So all of a sudden, guess what? They start coming to Mass. In fact, they're excited to come to Mass. They actually come to Mass a little early so they can sit down and chat with you a little bit before Mass starts. And they stay a little late so they can chat with you a little bit before after Mass is over. And then they start coming every week. And then you really get sneaky. You know, I go to adoration at 11 o'clock at night on Friday. Want to join me? Sneaky. Right, yeah. What's that? Oh, you're going to love it. Great. All right. Hopefully I tried to answer your question, but I think that's really crucial and important. You have to invest yourself in people. You know, I used to freak people out because when I was down at St. John's and even here, where do you see Deacon Bob at the beginning of Mass? Where do you see him? Seriously, where do you see him at the beginning of Mass? Most times, when I don't have something to do. Front door, that's right. And what am I doing? Mm-hmm, yeah. I'm investing myself. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. Glad you came back. Wonderful to see you again this week. How's everything going? Welcome to Mass. Good to have you. Hope you stay. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Don't worry about Father Len's homily. Anyway, just kidding. No, seriously, that's the key. You know, that really is the key. And I think all of us, again, have to be, that was, again, when I say the challenge of the 25th century church is to be like the first century church, that's what I mean. That's what made the first century church different. They invested in each other. They really invested. That's the Holy Spirit calling me to tell me to shut up. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And come back for the beginning of our Lenten series, which is Priest, Prophet, and King. I think you'll really enjoy it. So, great to see everybody tonight.